Welcome to Bringing IP to Life. I'm Anna from Amanya IP and Amanya Design, and I'm joined by my guests to talk about IP. We're going to hear people's stories of their creativity, business, and entrepreneurship. Intellectual property can be a really dull subject until it becomes personal. This is aimed to help see the relevance of IP in everyday life. Welcome to the show. So welcome back to the second part of this show with James. We're talking about his story in becoming an award-winning filmmaker. And we're going to hear a little bit of a snippet of this conversation, so have a listen.
Look at how you can protect your work and what you want to give away, because there's certain things that you do want to give away and you want to share with the world, and but just be mindful of what you're doing, what you're creating, who you're filming, and get the respect, get the permissions, get the agreements ahead up front.
So James, we're going to go back to your the name of your company, Rainbow Trout Films, and you went into the process of trademarking that, didn't you? Was that something you did immediately, or was it something you did a bit further down the line? I did it fairly early on because I discovered that it was a very important thing, because I'll come into something else about YouTube in a minute, but it was something that I did early on and didn't really know how to do it, right, but sort of just did it. And I had an IP lawyer speak to me later, said, you did this and you applied for this yourself and you got it all. They were quite shocked, and it's like, but I was quite relieved knowing that I'd done it right. But it was a little bit of a shot in the dark. So obviously, if you can get help, but of course help costs money, and getting a trademark costs money, so you've got to work out what you can do yourself and what you need to get an expert in to do. That's right, because my first trademark, I made loads of mistakes, and I was just like, I was supposed to be saving money here. I just lost a load of money. And then I did it again, did it right, and I'm just like, oh gosh. So learning the ropes, definitely. And it's one of those things that if you've put it in, there's things you can't change once it's been applied for. So it's worth knowing how to do it right. So you went forward, and that protected you from a name point of view and protected your company. So
I had an incident, and it was partly my own fault. So when I got my web address, rainbowtroutfilms.com, I foolishly at that point in time did not get the .uk, and some students took the .co.uk, and they were putting things on YouTube, and basically there was a point where YouTube got confused with their channel, and they suddenly had my logo on their channel. So I had to, but fortunately, because I had the IP and I'd got the trademark, I was able to use that and leverage that for them to take that down. Right. So, and then a year or so later, the URL became available for .co.uk, and I thought, I learned from my mistake and bought that straight away. It's like, so... a big tip for anybody with their business: get as many variations as you can as web addresses. They can all point to the main one, but it just helps protect it from somebody else coming and not pretending to be you, but doing similar things. It's a good move. You see it on The Apprentice when they're at the interview stage and go, so have you secured the web address? Oh, no, I haven't. Well, I have, and I bought it. Oh, no. Do you want me to buy it back off you? And it's as simple as that. So if you've got an idea about something and you don't go and get that domain immediately, somebody could have overheard you, especially in a cafe or something, gone straight on, bought it, your idea's gone.
Yeah. So did you went for the .co.uk and the .com, did you? Was there anything else you went for?
Oh, I've got lots of different ones, variations. .net, .org,
The funny thing is, they're all really cheap at the start, and then when they come around for a new one, they're like, oh, hold on a minute, I've got to pay for that one, and that one, and that one, and it starts to clock up.
It does clock up, but it is worth it to protect your brand.
That's right.
If you're looking at it from a long-term perspective, it's always a good idea, and it doesn't, in the scheme of things, doesn't cost that much.
Yeah. That's it. So, James, what's in the pipeline at the moment? What's coming up next? Because you've got the award-winning stuff happening at the moment, but what's in the pipeline at the moment?
We've got a few projects in the pipeline. One working with a local charity and a local writer. So that's in development at the moment. So we're very excited about see how that will develop.
Excellent.
We did do some development work with BFI funding. That's still ongoing. So we're just trying to find a home, see where that will fit. And obviously our bread and butter is corporate video production. So we're working a lot with local businesses, local charities, manufacturing engineering companies to produce their content for them. And working with bigger agencies as well. So, for instance, last year I was working with an agency in London for TikTok. So we were producing commercials for them, which were going online, and one or two of them made it onto the big screen, onto the cinema. So, which was really exciting. Yeah.
Nice one. So all sorts.
Yeah.
All sorts. Excellent. So you've got this great film.
Yeah.
It took you a little while to get ready, and you're now sharing it with the film award people, and that goes on for a little while. And then what happens next?
So we're going through the film festivals, trying to get as many film festivals and get some PR and good recognition for it. And the idea is then we attract a distribution deal with a distributor to either get it broadcast on terrestrial TV or get it streamed elsewhere. And so that's the idea behind it. And that's sort of like the levels you go through. But of course but when you just, for instance, I couldn't just take this and put it straight onto a streaming platform because we have archived material within the documentary, and that's licensed. So we have to pay for the license for that, and that can be quite expensive, especially if you're going to put it, I'm going to put it on Amazon Prime, for instance. There'll be a big cost attached to that. So that has to be factored into any deals that are done.
So you've created this film, and you've used archive material, and that you've been given permission to license that archive material. But the fact that you're looking at it going wider than just the film people, you would have to enter into deals in paying more money for the license, or is it different license? How does it work?
Yes, so it would be either more money or different licenses. It all depends on what territories you're going into. So, for instance, if you're just selling it to Spain, for instance, as an example, you could then just get a deal license for that territory. Okay. Obviously, if you're going for a worldwide license, that can be very expensive. So you can spend a lot of money doing that. So when I did my previous series called The In-Flight Food Trip, I made sure any footage I already had the full agreement and bought that in perpetuity for that project.
Right.
So I didn't have that problem where for that particular project. So you've always got to bear that in mind when you're doing different projects of where it's going to be, where you think it's going to land, and be aware of those costs going forward, because it's you've got to be aware of things like this. Yeah,
because for those of you that are listening, the licensing is basically renting somebody else's IP to use on something, isn't it? So you're saying you can rent this out under these kind of terms, you can use it under this kind of way, and you can pay us this much money for it. That's kind of how it works. So if you're looking at if you're an independent filmmaker, which you are, so you can create these independent films, but you can only go so far unless you get a distributor. Is that how it works?
Distributor. Then they would take on those costs and look at how they would best distribute your film. So that's what we're working towards at the moment. Is obviously building a good portfolio of where this could go. Because one of the things we could do with the film is it's a 40-minute short. We could extend it quite easily to a 52-minute, which would be classed as a TV hour. So we've got options. So it's building on that, because it's obviously we've got some great interviews with lots of different people. So it's just being able to build that in. Yeah.
So there isn't a kind of a quick move into streaming if you're an independent filmmaker. There's lots of stages.
There can be. You can. So we self-distributed the in-flight food trip using a distribution platform. So we cut out a distributor, but they distributed it on our behalf, and obviously, which is great for getting content out there. But you won't necessarily make much money out of it. Right. So for streaming, say, an hour's worth of content on Amazon, for one person watching an hour's worth, you might get 5 cents.
Oh dear.
In the dollar.
Right.
So I'm talking peanuts here. So it's.
Oh my goodness.
So if you're doing it that way, you're gonna have a lot of people watching your content to do that, and so I wouldn't say it's for everybody, because so I look at it for my project. I'm like going, well, I've just about covered my subtitling fees on that project with the money I made in 3 years. So you've got to. It swings and roundabouts as to where you look at where you put your funds and put your money, and what your expectations are. Yeah. So, because there's a load of great independent films out there, but it's a challenging environment at the moment. As I say, there's lots of freelancers out of work.
Right.
It's an ever evolving industry.
Yeah. Because you can get a Netflix subscription or a Prime Video subscription or something, but you're not necessarily aware of how the independents like you can actually make money. And if it's really tough getting even into that, where you're actually seen, that doesn't make it very easy for you, does it?
No, there's lots of challenges for all filmmakers, however big or small. Yeah. Even the big ones have challenges, because they've got a lot more riding on them, because they've put a lot more money into their print and advertising spend. Sometimes the P&A spend is more than the budget of the film, especially for some of the big blockbuster films. And if they don't make the money back, and then that's a flop, that can be very damaging for a big studio. So the stakes are high, whether you're on a budget of £500, £5,000, or £500 million, or several million. Each level has its challenges, but it's because you've got to raise money to make your projects, but then you've got to make sure you've got a good plan in place to recoup that for yourself and your investors.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. All these things that go on behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, because you're you're putting all this creativity together, but obviously you've got to pay the bills at the end of the day, and a lot of the costs will come up front, won't they? And you've got to look at that, factor that in.
Yeah, that's why we do a lot of our bread and butter work is corporate video making for companies, things, because that keeps the lights on. It's a very important part of our business model. So we can then go off and do these more creative ideas, which not necessarily will make us any money in the short or medium term, but hopefully it'll have bigger rewards. So you've got to look at what you're aiming for. So when I did my first series with the in-flight food trip, it was never about making a lot of money. It was more about proving that we could do it and get it through. And that's been seen in about 130 countries now. So I know that it can be done, and we've proved it can be done.
Yes.
So it's just managing expectations and being realistic about what you can achieve and what you can't achieve. So it's challenging, and I know I share stories with lots of other filmmakers, and we always how do you manage to do this? And crowdfunding, for instance, I've used that on a couple of it's that in itself. You've got to put a lot of time and effort into doing those. You don't just click a button and then magically everyone just puts money in. You've got to market it. You've got to really work at it. I mean, I've got a filmmaker colleague who's doing one at the moment for a documentary on the Goonies, the 80s film.
Right.
Lisa. And so she's got a campaign on Kickstarter at the moment. And I hope she makes it, because she's gone all in. It's like, if we don't hit the target, you don't get anything.
Right.
So it's can be a real high risk strategy to do it. But the rewards are there for the right person. So yeah.
So from a filmmaker's point of view, you would get the crowdfunding, and then what would you do would you be paying royalties back to those that invested? How would you do it? Or they just
crowdfunding tends to work with you're getting a perk, so you might be everything from a shout out or nothing at all,
right?
Or you might get a copy of the finished film. There's all sorts of different methods and ways to do it, but effectively crowdfunding, you're giving that filmmaker or that person money so they can make the film, and if you get a little piece of that back as a thank you, that's great. But yeah, you've got to look at all sorts of different funding models, so it doesn't all come from one pot generally. Even the bigger TV shows now, they'll get X amount of money from that pot, X amount of money from that pot, and so yeah. It's not all straightforward.
It's not, is it?
No.
It's not. But very interesting to hear what goes on behind the scenes. So we talked a little bit about the pre-production stuff, because you have to make sure that you have a whole load of stuff sorted out before you even go into production, making sure that people have signed things, all the documents, and it's just quite a palaver before you even get to the point where you can actually start to film. But that's all part of it, isn't it? And you learn all about the legal side behind that when you were in the studios, weren't you? It's a constant learning curve. So it's having a good partnership with a lawyer is obviously the best way forward. So if there's anything you can go, I'm not sure about this, you've got somebody to run it by officially, because you just don't want that to come back and bite you, because it will. Yeah, because we talked before about the fact that you might take a film of somebody, even in a company or something, and if you haven't got all the permissions, once all the people that are going to be filmed haven't given rights to you to do that, somebody could kick off later on and you have to pull the whole thing. So it's a sort of thing that technically you think, oh, is it really so important? But it does become very important in the, long term.
Yeah, that's why you have release forms for them to fill in, and then if they've filled in that, then you'll have a layer of protection at least to say, oh no, you signed this. But if you didn't sign it, then you haven't. So you either have to take them out or blur them out, and then that's at your cost. Yeah,
that's right. And you're talking about AI from the whole industry point of view. I mean, we understand, I look at it from the IP point of view, where it's kind of like ownership and, all that malarkey. But from a film producer's point of view, how does it impact you? What sort of things does it, what does it impact?
Well, IP, you hit it on the head. Who owns the IP on what's created by artificial intelligence? Is it the software company? Is it you as the content producer? There's lots of AI learning going on in the background, and it's happening whether we like it or not.
That's right.
It's a challenge. I know one of the big UK broadcasters has sort of banned AI use in the creation of their products because of the IP question, because they need to have ownership of what they've created. And if AI's created it, is it the software company behind that has that IP? And if you're then monetizing and creating things on the back of that, you've got to get it right. I mean, I'm sure you remember the Willy Wonka experience that was in last year, or was it this year? And the poster was generated by artificial intelligence, and it looked amazing.
Right.
But then the reality of the experience was anything but that. So you to.
I didn't know about this. Tell me a little bit more, because I didn't know about that one.
Well, look it up. It hit all the news headlines. So they'd created an AI-generated poster of this Willy Wonka factory experience, and then lots of people turned up and look it up, because the expectations didn't meet the poster, which was amazing. Because then you have this so you've got to be careful you don't set yourself up for a fall.
Yeah. And one of the challenges which I'm becoming aware of the more I'm in the IP space is that the IP computers, as they're learning off other people's IP, learning off other people's creations. And so what they're creating isn't necessarily all original. It's quite often using copyrighted material or whatever for it to learn how to create stuff, which becomes an IP nightmare, absolute IP nightmare, which is what you're talking about. And that's before you even get into mimicking actors and all that kind of stuff, because that's a whole other avenue of, is that a real person or is it actually somebody that's created on AI talking? And sometimes the really good ones, you can't tell the difference. Some of the entry-level ones you can tell, but not all of them. Some of them you can't tell.
Yeah, and this just creates lots of issues for all of us, especially as content creators. You've got a real threat there, as it were, that because it's getting better and better all the time and incredibly fast. I'll just look back at where we were a year ago and how good it was then.
Yes.
But because AI is just the movement of what they can achieve now compared to what they could achieve a year ago is phenomenal, and it's quite scary in a way that would have taken 2 or 3 years in the old time, but because it's just accelerating beyond how anyone or any government or any anyone in the industries can keep up with almost, because it's happening anyway. We can't stop it from happening.
No.
But it's got its advantages though.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was listening to somebody the other day who was talking about when he was at school and starting at work, how they were talking about the revolution, which was the internet, and how that would impact their lives. And they're kind of looking at, what the potential was and what the downsides were. And he said, what we're in now with the AI is a similar kind of revolution, that it has the same potential to change our lives in ways that we could never, ever imagine. And you can see the start of that. And I think, like you say, it's just the beginning of what this could become, which is huge. Is huge if we think about the impact the internet has had on us and has had on the world and our lives every day. If we think about it in the similar kind of scale, we kind of think, wow, that's going to be having a very big impact on everything we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I just hope it's not like the plot of Terminator.
Yeah, definitely. If you'd like to know more about intellectual property or IP, check out the Amanya IP website at www.amanyaipcourses.com. Courses vary from general basic understanding about IP for adults, young people and students, through to professional courses and courses for the USA market. The courses are aimed to help young people, students, designers, artists, business owners and entrepreneurs become IP smart to enable them to protect their dreams. So, James, we've talked about IP as well today. From an IP point of view, are there tips or things that you would share with the listeners that you think would be beneficial for them to know? We talked about all the sort of things that you faced as a film director, but from an IP perspective, is there advice that you would give listeners or watchers as to what would be a good idea from an IP point of view as a film director or involved in the creative industry?
Look at how you can protect your work and what you want to give away, because there's certain things that you do want to give away and you want to share with the world, but just be mindful of what you're doing, what you're creating, who you're filming, and get the respect, get the permissions, get the agreements ahead up front. It'll just make your life a lot easier later on. So I know a lot of companies, you'll do a corporate video for a company and then somebody will leave.
Yes.
And then it's like, oh, do we need to take that person out? Or did they sign a release form? If they sign a release form, they've given their right for that image and that use to remain, even if they've left the company.
Yes.
So it's things like that, having a little bit of due care. It's not always easy because sometimes we're in a rush situation, quick, something's happening very fast. You've just got to go with it. Certainly news very much works that way, but then they have agreements where you can get away with that. It's when you go down the line of that, transposing that into other things like documentary films, and where that footage is then used of then who's got that permission. So it can be a bit of a minefield. I would say get advice early, and don't just stick your head in the sand, because that won't help you, and could cause you big problems in the future.
Yeah, definitely. James, where can people find you and find the studio, find what you're doing? So
obviously we have our website, www.rainbowtroutfilms.com. And then the studios, albionstreetstudios.co.uk. We're based in the centre of Halifax, about a minute's walk from the Peace Hall, 5 minutes walk from the local train station. And we're in Westgate Arcade, above a lovely bakehouse and Korean restaurant. So, and we have our facilities here. Call, email, DM. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, so find me on LinkedIn. That's probably my first port of call of what I recommend. But yeah.
Yeah, and you're not just doing film work, are you, James? Because you're teaching and you're talking as well. Tell people a little bit more about what you're doing there.
Oh yeah, so we will do a lot of help with the local schools and colleges. So I'll go and give talks to the media students. A couple of months ago, we had students from Calderdale College in Halifax come into the studio, and we showed them around, gave them a talk about filmmaking and what's all involved with that. So it's my way of giving back as and when I can. It's always nice to share some of the stories, the on-set stories, and things like that, because it always gets everyone excited and hopefully inspiring the next generation. So that's a key bit of ethos for us.
Yeah, definitely. And there's so much stuff that's film work that's done around our area in West Yorkshire now anyway, that, you know, it isn't all based down south anymore. There's a lot of stuff that's around here and being done locally that people can feel like they could be part of it, part of the whole creative industry.
Yeah, there are so many opportunities now that there weren't in my when I was growing up and getting those things. And to think that we had Marvel Studios here in Halifax a couple of years back filming Secret Invasion, and you've got all these famous actors running around, and Samuel L. Jackson just in the coffee shop going, wow, what's going on here?
Wow.
Halifax has really got itself on the map. So it's a really, and Yorkshire, it's a great place to be. So yeah, let's have more of that coming to the region.
Oh, absolutely. Well, so I've got to know a little bit more behind the scenes with film director. So thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks, Anna. Thanks for having me. Lovely talking to you.
You're very welcome. So if you want to know more about IP, you can head over to my website, and it's www.amanyaipcourses.com. And if you want to find out how smart you are about IP, take a look at the quiz, and that will give you some idea. And for my next show, I'm going to be talking to an entrepreneur. And that's it from me today. If you want to get in touch, if you've got any questions or want to chat about IP, then find me out on www.amanyaipcourses.com. I'm also on LinkedIn as well. So have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch up with you soon. Thank you. Thanks for joining us on the show. Like, follow and subscribe to make sure you hear about what's coming up next. You can head over to the website www.amanyaipcourses.com to find out more. See you again soon.